Hello guys, since the autosave plugin has changed since the first version, I have decided to update the tutorial, at least the fundamental aspects of the plugin. So for that I have created this first person project. This is the first person project template. So the first thing we need to do here is to enable the plugin. So I'm going to edit the plugins and I'm going to make sure that the plugin is enabled. Auto-save plugin enabled. Restart now. So now that the plugin is enabled, I'm going to create the save and load functionality. Um, I can do it anywhere. So for this example, I'm going to use the first person character. So I'm going to open this character and go to the event graph, and here I'm going to create the save and load functionality. So I'm going to create two custom events: save game, custom event for load game. So when I save the game, I want to first to call this function autofill save game object that is going to save the game, all the actors that has the CSW autosave component. So uh, first, this object needs a save game object. So in begin play, we are going to create this save game object. So create save game object on begin play, and this save game object is going to be the type of CSW autosave game object. So just let's store this variable. I'm going to call it autosave. So I can use this variable now here, and this function also needs an input levels with autosave actors. This input I can just drag it here, levels with autosave actors, and this function needs an array of levels that we want to save. In case we are using level streaming, then we can filter this level. So I can get level names. So in this case, I want to save all the levels since I only have one. So this is going to save. Uh, this is going to fill this save game object with the data from the actors. So now that this save game object is filled here, we are just going to save the game to the slot. Save game to slot. I'm going to call this slot 01, and you will see here that there is some extra options we can save in different paths, but we are not going to do. We are going to compress the file. So in load game, that's it. It's saved in the game. So I could branch here and say print game saved, and on load game, uh, I'm going to do the other way around. First, I'm going to load the game from the slot. Loads game from slot, and to oh I need to use the same function. Since this is saving the compressed file, I need to use the CSW load game from slot. So I use the same slot name, and I use the autosave object. So now that the game is being loaded, this shouldn't be null. So at this point, I should use this return value to auto-load actors data from save. You can call this auto-load actor data from save, and well, auto-load actor data from save. Okay, and now I can drag this save object and use this same inputs. So once the game has been loaded, I can print game loaded. Game loaded. So basically this is the save and load functionality, and this is the essential, fundamental. For this case, I also want to call these functions save and load when I press some buttons. So I'm going to write key 1 and key 2. So when I press 1, I want to save the game. I'm going to call this. When I press 2, I want to load the game. So if I click play now, nothing is happening. Oh, I'm sorry, I need to load this map first. Okay. Well, the game is being saved, but we are not saving anything yet. And the reason why that's happening is because we need some actors that has the CSW Auto-Save component. So since this is the character, I'm just going to add this Auto-Save and load component here. And once this is added, this component has some options here. You see that the component is enabled by default, and you see that there is an option here, save components. If I check the save components, then this actor is going to save the location, rotation, scale, linear velocity, and angular velocity of the components. So if I compile and play now, and I press 1, and now I'm going to move here, I'm going to press 2, and you see that it moves me back to my original position. So let's see if it's working. The rotation, I think it wasn't working. Okay, the rotation is not working because the rotation is probably being driven by the player controller. So let's see if I want to save the rotation. You see that this option is saving the actor, location, rotation, scale from these components. If these components have these options, and you see that there is also custom component options, which I can say, for example, hey, I don't want to save this mesh on player, or I don't want to save the camera. Let's say I would just grab the name, I put it here and say, hey, I don't want to save this. So you can also do that. So as I was saying, this player is not saving the rotation. So I'm going to save here. I'm going to load now, and the rotation is not being saved. And the reason why that's happening is because the rotation is probably being driven by the player controller. So we need to customize that. So for customizing how the data, an extra data you want to save, since the player controller is something outside this actor, it's not a variable that you can create, nothing new. You need to use the events from the CSW Auto-Save. So there is two main events you have to keep in mind, and those events are on begin save and on end load. This happens before the game is being saved, so anything you do here is going to be saved. And this event happens when the game is after the game is loaded. So you want to make something here too. So in this case, I want to save the rotation of the player controller. So for saving the rotation, I want to create a variable here. I'm going to call it PC rotation. and it's going to be a rotator. So I have the rotator here, and I want to get the rotation from somewhere. So I'm going to call the get controller get control rotation. I think yes, yeah, control rotation. I set this is the variable that is not being saved because it is somewhere else. It is not part of the transform of the actor. So I set the rotation. When I save the game, I am setting the rotation from the player controller to this variable I have created. So when I load the game, I want to do the opposite, the other way around. I get this variable that is being saved, and I set the control rotation, and I think this is the player controller here. Set control rotation here. So one fundamental aspect of variables, of saving variables here, is that when you want to save variables, in this case the PC rotation, you need to tell the variable to save itself. So you can click this variable or any other variable here and say go to advanced and check this option, save game. The plugin can recognize variables that has this property enabled, and it's going to save its value. So if I click here, this on begin save, this variable is going to be saved based on the control rotation or the player controller rotation. I'm going to get the rotation from here, so it's better, it's easy to understand. You see that this is, I think this is the same variable, yeah, but okay, let's get it from here. Now this is going to be saved, to be serialized into save file, and when the game is loaded, the value is going to be restored. After the game is loaded, it's going to be restored. So we use this value to set the rotation again, set the rotation of the play. So let's test it. I'm going to save this position now. I'm going to move and load, and you see that the rotation is being saved too. So what you saw here in this example is that we are saving the game. This is the global save and load functions. This here, and this can be anywhere, not in the player character. You can place this anywhere. These functions, since these are the global functions, and you see how simple it is to make a save and load systems, save and load functions here. And this is just for saving custom data from this character. You see here that there is two fundamental aspects here. We are saving custom information from this character. In this case, we are saving the control rotation, that it is not part of what this plugin can automatically save. It's not that. So well, and the second thing we are doing here is we are creating variables that has the save game state. So you see that you can create any variable here. You can create life, for example, life, and say, hey, my life is going to be a float, and it's going to be start at 100, and it's going to use, I'm going to use a timer by event. I'm going to set this timer by event here. So I'm going to call this custom event set timer and call this here begin play. So it's going to play at the beginning of the game. So let's say that this is just an example. I'm going to set the timer here that is going to loop each second, and it's going to loop, and it's going to timer is going to just decrement its life, nothing more, nothing complicated. Decrement float. So I'm going to go to here, key P of print, and in P I'm going to print the value of the life, or better yet, I'm going to print the value in a tick. So yeah, this is just an example. I'm going to print this value on 0. So print life, and well, you see that each second this life should be reduced by 1. So let's test this. 1, 91, 98. So if I save the game, it should return to 95. Is when I save the game. Of course, it's not working now, and the reason why it's not working is because these variables should have this property enabled. So if I enable save game, and save life is going to be serialized, and you see that I don't need to set the value here on this event. If these events are only useful when I want to save some custom data that is not part of the actor, it's not part of these variables. So in this case, this variable is being modified anywhere else, and it's being saved, it's being serialized just because it has this property enabled. And I'm going to test it. I'm going to say 95, save the game. So I'm going to move, and load the game, and you see that it's working. I'm going to play, and it's working. You see that? It's working. And it's that easy to save the game. By the way, you can't save any actor this way. So for example, the global functionality is here, and this actor also has is saving its own data. So as I mentioned, this global functionality of save game and load game could be anywhere, and probably shouldn't be here. So I can, just for showing you, I'm just going to, for example, this example, I'm going to add this component, CSW Auto-Save component. So this cube is going to save itself. This cube is here. So for example, let's move this cube here. I'm going to move here, save the game, load, and you see that when I load, I'm going to load, and the cube didn't move. Why that's happening? Oh, of course, this component should enable save components. So I'm going to save now, and go here, save, and you see that it's loading. The cube is being loaded. So, for example, you can save actors that are in the world, or you can save actors that you create here. So, for example, I'm going to just create a simple cube. I'm going to save this to cube. Let's make this the root, and let's enable simulate physics. Let's disable gravity, and just let's add the CSW Auto-Save and Load component. So this cube is going to save itself. So any cube I place in the world is going to use this option. So I click here and I save components. So it's going to save the data from this data from the components, only this data. If you want to save extra data, I already show you how you can do that using these events. So let's say I've placed the cube here. I'm going to make some copies. So I have these cubes here. I'm going to save, move, and load again, and they are here. So you see that it's working. See that it's working. So you can actually save the game. It's that easy. So also it's worth to mention that you can disable. You can, for example, I don't know, you don't want to save the location of this actor, so you can move freely, for example. You see that now the location is not being saved, only the rotation. Only the rotation is being saved. Or in case you don't like this way, you can say simply, I don't want to save the components. I just want to save only the things I want to save. I don't want to automatically save anything. So you can use these events here to just, for example, save the location of the actor. So player location, for example, I'm going to say this is going to be a vector, and this is going to save the game. So I can grab here. For example, I have disabled. This component. So if I try to play the game, you see that it's not. It's just going to save the rotation, but anything else. The rotation, for example, here, only the rotation, but the location is not being loaded. Let's say the location is not being loaded. So I am going to manually save the location using this variable. I'm going to get the actual location. Here I'm going to set the actual location. So as I showed you before, this variable is saving the data. So you can grab here, say on begin save, I am saving the rotation, the location, and on load, I'm loading the rotation and the location of the actor. You see this here that this component is not saving anything by default. We are just manually saving stuff. So you have this power too. So I'm going to save here, move, and you see it's working. I'm going to save here, move, and you see it's working. So you can also manually save stuff, and in fact this is more performant than just checking these. It's fast. It's more fast. This is faster. And why would you want to use this? Well, as I showed you before, you can just grab any actor here in the world and just add a component, and this component can save this actor without needing or creating a new blueprint of this cube. By the way, I just added to a cube that already has. So I'm going to add this, for example, this to save. So oh, I forgot to check this. So save and load, and you see how useful it is to have these options in case you don't want to create blueprints from static meshes or anything that is in the world already. So I'm going to wrap up the video now.